Hi everyone, welcome to Everything Dog Training with me, John McGuigan, Glasgow dog trainer and behaviour consultant. I'm a professional dog trainer in Glasgow, in Scotland, and I have been working with dogs in a professional capacity for around 17 years. I've got thousands of hours of experience doing one-to-one coaching with people and their dogs to reach solutions to their training and behaviour problems through positive reinforcement. Ways that I can help you. We're going to go on to our guest today. We've got a really good conversation with Nathan Bishop, who's a dog trainer he is on the outskirts of Birmingham just now, but he was further down south in England. We had a really nice conversation, but I'll introduce Nathan in a second. So ways that you can benefit from this podcast. We've got our back catalogue that you can listen to. You may have done so already. If you're listening to us for the first time, welcome, and I hope you enjoy it. Lots of, I think we're now at nearing 40 episodes or thereabouts. Lots of information for you to peruse. You can also get us on our socials at Glasgow Dog Trainer on Facebook, Instagram and on YouTube, where I've got hundreds of videos going through various aspects of dog training. We've got video blogs where me talking into the camera to give you information on aspects of your life with your dog, and live training sessions as well with me working with clients. I'm available for seminars and workshops. If you're interested in booking me, please do get in touch. I'm also interested in hearing from you if you're wanting to come onto the podcast as well. Try not to use that word interested so much. If you would like to come onto the podcast, so if you're a reward based dog person, whether that's a vet, dog trainer, behaviour consultant, you run a boarding kennel or a dog walker, or you're a groomer, we want to hear from you. Yeah, we want to hear from you. Always interested in getting some new voices heard. What I like to do in the podcast with our guests is get a variety of people on, so I try and stay away from asking the, in quotes, big names, because and they're not little people. I'm not a little person, okay? None of my guests are little people. Nobody's a little person. You're only a little person through your actions, not because of your reputation or your popularity or lack thereof. I want to hear from people that have got a broad range of experiences on the planet, because you're bringing that range of experience into your interactions with your dogs, and others can benefit from that, and I want to hear from you. So if you're interested in coming on the podcast and having a chat with me, ping me an email, info@glasgowdogtrainer.co.uk. We also offer one-to-one remote consultations. Okay, so we do them by Zoom. And I've done them with people across the world with a fair degree of success. So if you're not local to Glasgow, then get in touch with me. Same again, info@glasgowdogtrainer.co.uk. I've got a discount code for you this week. We've got a number of online courses which I'll link in the show notes. We've got 2 for adolescent dogs, calm on cue, so basically allowing your dog to calm down, and a short adolescent dogs course. We've got the Triangle of Trust, which is a kind of flagship course, which has bulletproof focus, loose lead walking, recall, and the aggression course. So that's all included in that course. It's probably our best value bundle at £77, which works out just around $100 US, and you get 10% off using the code POD10 on all of the courses that are linked in the show notes. So we've got that one, the Triangle of Trust, bulletproof focus. The best, I can guarantee, with the best money you've ever spent on your dog. Super affordable, £13, around $16. And we've got a loose lead walking and a recall course as well. The way the courses are set out is that they are step-by-step instruction of the theory and the practical application of those things, and then we are working those on real time with different dogs, so it fully breaks those down. They're super easy to follow and really popular. So use the code POD10 at the checkout, and you'll get a further 10% off those courses, which are already affordable as it is. I thoroughly enjoyed a conversation with Nathan. I also think Nathan's got a cool name, Nathan Bishop. It's like something from a spy movie. Nathan Bishop saw the suspect across the crowded airport departure lounge. Okay, so anyway, I had a really cool conversation with Nathan. So Nathan is of Attune Dog Training, and they focus on helping dogs and their owners build strong trust-based relationships through positive reinforcement techniques. With over 10 years of experience and accreditation from the Institute of Modern Dog Trainers, he works closely with his clients to address the root causes of behaviour issues, ensuring long-term sustainable progress. He specialises in working dogs in domestic settings, tailoring his approach to each dog's unique needs. His training is real-world oriented, focusing on environments where dogs and their owners live and interact daily, with personalised support both locally in the West Midlands area and online. And you can reach Nathan through his socials, his website, Instagram and Facebook, which I'll link in the show notes. As I said before, I like talking to people about dog training. I could talk to them about dog training all day long, and I like hearing different people's views. And there was a few things that Nathan really gloriously summarised in a way that I hadn't thought before. And this is it just illustrates, and not for a second I think I know everything, but if we're just hearing the same voices and we're just learning from the same people all the time, and it becomes somewhat of an echo chamber. And as I said before, rigid in our ethics and flexible in our approach. So we've got lots of different ways that we can reach an objective as long as ethically we are compatible. And a couple of things with Nathan really made me think, which is the whole purpose of having these conversations, both for myself. I know it's not about me, because I'm putting them out so you can listen to them. But if I'm getting something from them and something new, then there's every likelihood that you will as well. So let's hear what we are talking about with Nathan. Welcome, Nathan. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule. I know that we've had backwards and forwards trying to get this arranged, and that's been my fault, so apologies about that.
No, it's absolutely fine. It's great to have your company.
So tell us, where are you in the world, and what's your role in the dog world?
So I have been in the dog world for about 10 years now. My business is based out of Bromsgrove in Worcestershire. Can never say that when I've only just moved here. I've been here about 6 months now. But I subscribe to the IMDT's ethos, accredited with them guys. I believe in positive, force-free, science-proof training. And my goal out there in the world is just to get people out with their dogs enjoying the world. Give the dogs the chance to actually explore and enjoy it, and help build that relationship between dog and owner, and make everything work in harmony, really.
So you do one-to-one, do you do classes as well?
I don't actually run any classes, not because I can't, but more to the point because I prefer that tailored approach. I like focusing on not just the dog, but the owners as well. I think that there's a lot of owners out there that can kind of get in their own way sometimes. And if you've got a class environment and they're just trying to bang out criteria, I think they can often miss some of the simple things that make a bigger difference. Okay. So the one-to-one stuff tends to work a lot better for me.
And you were saying there about banging out criteria. What do you mean by that?
So in terms of like your basic obedience training, we're always working for the quicker this, or the prettier that, or the sturdier this. And we're always driving a higher standard all the time. And I think you can get blinded by the basics of, well, why isn't your dog achieving that standard consistently? And I think it takes away from that, what is your dog comfortable and happy in this position in the first place? Like, we can improve, we can use higher reinforcers, we can use more frequent reinforcers, but what we're not addressing there is why we're needing to do that in the first place.
Yeah, okay. So we'll circle, there are a few things there to expand on. What's the pros and cons of building that higher performance? What would that be?
So it depends on what discipline you're looking for. If you're looking, in my view, if you're looking to train for a specific standard and you want to reach a criteria, so you might want to do the Kennel Club Good Dogs, or you want to do ring work or stuff like that, yeah, great. Get your dog performing, learn how to make them work harder. But I think I speak quite comfortably for most of my owners when I say that all they really want is a calm, contented and safe dog. Yeah. And actually, a responsive recall is a responsive recall. The time it takes to get from point A to point B is negligible. Yeah, it's not really important. But the fact that your dog is tuned in enough to listen and respond to you in the first place is what most people are looking for and wanting. And I think if you keep the criteria realistic with what you want from your dog, I think everything's a lot easier to achieve.
Yeah.
And it allows people more room for success, to feel more pride, to feel more in control. And ultimately, it brings a better relationship to both the dog and the owner.
There's some interesting stuff there. Do you have children?
I do.
Right. So my boy's 22, and when they were him and his sister were younger, and you would say to them, and this is in order to try and make it a game or to motivate stuff, you would go like that. You'd go, right, as fast as you can, run upstairs and wash your hands before dinner. You know, so they belt up the stairs and wash their hands. Whereas now, if I shout, I mean, we're playing his guitar, you know, and now dinner's ready or whatever, and I call him through, he's going to come because it's, you know, his dinner's ready. So, and it's not, I'm not, you know, he does his fair share of the household work. But if I'm making a dinner and he comes through, and it might take him 20 seconds to come through, but that's similar to our dogs. You ask your dog to come back, your dog potters towards you, and they maybe have a little sniff on the way. They know you've asked them, and we can see them coming.
Mm.
So
I'm often stood there with clients, and something I do is it's just really simple. I just say how many times. So they'll call their dog back, and you can see the dog's lifted its head, it's engaged in the command, but not in the time scale that the owner's driving.
yeah,
So they ask again, and they ask again, and they ask again. So I just say how many times, and they're like, well, I've just asked them to come back. Yeah, but you've asked them 4 times.
yeah,
So what they've learned there is to ignore the first three plights.
yeah,
So you're actually slowing down your response time. And I think sometimes if we dial right back to that simple basics of I want your attention, I'm asking for it, and I'm gonna wait until you give it to me.
yeah,
You give them the space and the time to respond, then you can start working with it.
yeah. I heard you the first thing I saw. I heard what you
Yeah,
said.
yeah,
I
yeah.
was working with a family just now, and I get this a lot when I'm working with family with young kids. And I asked, the kids are 9 and 11, and they've just adopted it's a retired police dog. And I asked the 11-year-old to do something relatively simple in relation to the dog. And the mum immediately jumped in and told him exactly the same thing that I'd just said. And I'm cheeky about it. I just, shh, shh, shh. There's only one trainer here, and that's me. There's only one person teaching this, right? And I mean, I smile and stuff like that, you know, but I am cheeky about it. And then I say to the mum afterwards, or dad, gran, or granddad, are the words that you said any different from the words that I said? No. Your child just needs time to process what I've asked them to do because it's something new that you've asked them. That's what the dog's doing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in the modern world, like there's you can make no bones about it. The modern world's a very busy place,
Yeah,
and most people are working against a time restraint anyway. In terms of I've got an hour to walk my dog,
yeah,
so they're trying to maximize that time. And I think a lot of people fall to stimulation and to exercise and just want to go, 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 go. And these dogs are I don't want to use the word bombarded. I think that's too far. But they're just getting stuck into what they're there to do.
yeah,
And then you've got people calling and back and all the rest of it. And they're pillar to post. They don't get that time to just find their feet wherever they're stood. And
yeah,
they're perpetually moving forwards or chasing a ball or chasing around with other dogs. And they're not just in the moment. And I think that is on the lion's share what slows down that response.
yeah. Okay. Um, so we talked just before about what we want. We were talking about what we wanted to talk about today before we started recording, and you'd said about uh, we see people get lots of people, and there's broad get demographics with different groups, and people want different things for their dogs. But lots of people want their dog to do all of the stuff all of the time. So they get a dog and they train it to the nth degree, and they're just as you're saying they're doing all the ball work and the search work and all the obedience stuff. But you're asking people to think about something differently from that. So what would that be?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big topic, but in a nutshell, like we're bombarded with what dogs can achieve, be it in terms of social media or crufts and agility, flyball. We're constantly bombarded with what dogs can achieve, and we're pushed towards working dogs being the good dogs. So the collies, the Malinois, they've all got drive, they've all got want and desire, and society pushes us to max them out all the time.
Yeah.
And I think in my experience, what society is asking for is actually a dog that just kind of simmers into their routine and sits with them and is calm with them, and they can trust them to be around them when they're out. And I can't help but see a mismatch there.
Yeah.
Like I fully appreciate that a Malawai has got a high drive and a lot of work in them, and you can get a lot of behavior from them, or a high standard from them, but that doesn't necessarily mean you should. And an example I often use it with like farm dogs, like collies and spaniels and things like that. Yeah, they're working dogs, but they're not running sheep back into the pen,
Yeah.
8 hours of the day. They're doing maybe 1 or 2 runs a day, and the same with the spaniels and a pheasant. They're maybe cleaning up the drives and working 1 day a week for a beat and a shoot. But the rest of the time, they're kicking their heels out at the farmyard.
Yeah, yeah. I
And I
think that's
think
what a lot of people don't understand, isn't it? That they do think that the collie is, I mean, when a collie's working sheep, unless the sheep are certainly up here, I mean, it'll be similar down south. If the sheep are scattered over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres, that's a full day's work for that dog, you know.
agree. There's always exceptions to the rule, aren't there?
But that's not every day,
No.
you know. And when they're herding on a daily basis, most of that stuff's done. They just lie down and stare at the sheep.
Or they're sat in the back of the truck.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I think people miss this because I think we talk in definitives and we generalize, and we see that a collie can work at an elevated level. So the societal expectation is a collie should work all day long. And what I see as a trainer is I walk into these dogs and these collies, the second you walk in the door, they're pursed mouth, they're tight, they're wound, and they're like, what are we doing now? What are we doing now? What are we doing now? Instead of actually just being like, when they're at home, they should just be an expensive rug. Let's be real.
Yeah.
They should just be chilling and relaxing. They shouldn't want for anything. There's that level of contentment that I think has been missed by driving a training criteria all the time.
So you train, yeah, you know,
Yeah.
yeah. So lift weights and you do cardio and you know,
Yeah, I do. I run, I cycle, I swim, do some weight work and some classes as well.
right. And then you're working full time, running a business.
Yeah, so Monday to Friday, I generally work between the hours of 8 in the morning and 8 in the evening.
Okay.
Tend not to work weekends if I can help it.
Right. Now, and you like your bed.
Oh God, yes.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So it's having a full enriched active life but not doing too much because I mean how old are you, Nathan?
37.
Right, okay. So when I was your age, I was working the same, you know, so I was working full time and running my dog training business, and I was run ragged, you know, to the state where you become, and you get away with it because you're fit and young, and then you have to start slowing down, you know, and now I'm like that. I don't do anywhere near that amount of work, you know, now. But I'm at a different stage of my life, you know, I'm 15 years older than you are, and you know, and I'm like that. I've done all that, you know. So our
Yeah.
dogs are similar, yeah. So we give them that activity, but we have to then do something else with them.
So something I generally say is everything in moderation, and I stamp that through every aspect. When I go into a client, at the initial consultation, one thing I always do is go through my 5. So I go through their walks, I go through their sleep, I go through their food, enrichment, and play.
Okay, nice.
Those 5 topics, and I make sure there's an element of balance.
So tell us them again.
So I'll go through sleep, I'll go through walks, I'll go through food, I'll go through enrichment, and I'll go through play.
Okay, because we're going to we'll talk about some of those or we'll expand on some of them. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what made you pick those ones?
What made them? Because in my experience, if you've got owners tend to when they've got a restless dog, they tend to focus on physical.
Okay.
And what I've found is if you focus on the physical, you can have a mentally bored dog that's still restless,
yeah,
and you just perpetuate the problem. You just get bigger and bigger, and you're doing more and more and more and more and more, and you're trying to wear the dog out.
Okay.
And ultimately, it's a perpetual loop. But if you've got enough sleep in there, enough downtime, enough sleep, enough rest, and you've got some mental stimulation in there, so they're mentally quenched and relaxed, and you've got enough time in the outside world to like get about, stretch your legs, get out, and just kind of move around a little bit, and then you've got the right balance of food and interaction in there as well.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, every time I go through this process with my clients, within 1 to 2 weeks, they're all responding to me saying, "God, I almost thought my dog was ill. They're so much calmer."
Yeah.
And it's
And
like, no, they're not ill. They're just in rest mode now.
yeah,
They're out of that fight or flight system, and they're down in that rest and digest.
yeah. It's the same as it's similar to when, and I mention Logan a lot because he's been a really good dog. He's been a really good dog, full stop. I can say that on its own. But he's been an awesome dog to learn from because he was one of those dogs really stressed, you know, bored out his mind. Who knows what happened to him in a year or two before he came to live with us. But he slept when he came in here, and I took all the pressure off him. And he easily slept for 20 hours a day for the first 3 months.
Yeah. And the figures on this on sleep are mind-boggling. And I've read so many controversial articles on sleep in dogs. So
Yeah.
I'm not gonna trip myself up by quoting too many figures here. But I've come across, I've met dogs, and in fact I've got two myself. I've got two spaniels. One of them will sleep all day. He is not bothered at all. He'll come out with you out of loyalty, but you get out and he's like, not really too bothered. And he'll just mooch around. He's an absolute bimbler.
Yeah.
Whereas the other one is just like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And it's a real struggle. You've actively got to give him the space to switch off and go calm down and go to sleep. But they're both the same breed. They both come from the same sort of background. They've both got working lines in them. They're both on paper, they're both spaniels. They're both working dogs, but they couldn't be any more opposed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that gets missed when we drill in like these, when we drill in figures and everything else. We don't take into consideration the dog themselves either.
So with your more active dog, when he's like, what are we doing? You still need to do stuff with him.
Oh, absolutely. And he's got far more capacity is a good word.
Yeah.
Like he has got more potential, more capacity in terms of doing stuff. But then on the flip side of that, my lazy dog's far more intelligent.
Yeah.
Far more, it's got far more problem solving skills. So they've both got strengths and weaknesses. They both need stuff, but they need very different stuff, even though they fit the same profile.
Do you think that's because so what jumps out at me there is, do you think your air quotes lazy dog, do you think because he's calmer and more settled, his thought process is clearer because he can actually think?
110%.
Yeah.
I use the expression quite often, losing their heads.
Yeah.
With any dogs, not just mine. And what I want to see from my dogs is that they've still got their head. And what I mean by that is they're still looking after themselves. So we know that if we weren't on this planet, dogs would take care of themselves. They're capable of looking after themselves. So inherently, they're not going to waste energy. They're not going to put themselves in risk or in danger. They're not going to do that constantly all day long or repeatedly, or they'll learn from those mistakes.
Yeah.
But if we see a dog that's losing their spatial awareness, tripping over, like generally just not thinking and looking after themselves, they're losing their mind, they're losing their head.
Yeah.
So they're getting detached from that ability to stay calm, centered, and take care of themselves.
Yeah. And we see that with children when they start goofing off. You know, so, and they start, it's, you know, those, and I'm going to say annoying behavior against loud screaming, frantic movements with their hand, you know, acting stupid, things that a lot of parents get embarrassed about because it's just these goofy, weird behaviors that children do. But it's the same stuff. They're losing, something's too much for them and they need to do something else, which is not as stimulating.
At the end of the day, it's an expression of emotion.
Yeah.
I mean, we can sit here and we can talk about jumping up, we can talk about barking, and that's a very top level understanding of what's actually happening in that moment. But below that is the fact that they're doing any of those things in the first place demonstrates that their emotional regulation is slipping,
Yeah, yeah,
and they're no longer to hold their space. They're no longer to look after themselves. They're no longer able to make good rational choices.
yeah. Okay.
And for me personally, and maybe it is personal, but honestly, I believe that if you keep that dog in that calmer end of the spectrum more of the time, that's not to say they can't run around and be a fool,
Yeah,
but if they're in that calmer end of the spectrum more of the time, they've got more processing capacity. They're more reasonable, more biddable. They're generally more affectionate and more connected with you. And everything that we value from our dogs and dream for and wish for from our dogs is more abundant.
yeah. Okay. There's a few things, so I'm gonna. God, there's so much to talk about there. Do you ever get where I did a kind of business workshop this time last year, and one of the guys was saying that um, the way he described it was he feels, and as soon as he described it as this, I was like, I know exactly what you feel, and he said crispy, right? So that's what he can feel on his skin, right? This sort of kind of high energy, but it's like a nervous energy, and I see it a lot. I only have a male experience of this, obviously, but I see it with if I'm around. A good example of it would be we go into jiu-jitsu and we come out and we've had a really good training session, and you get that level of energy and volume in the changing room. You know,
I call that whoop whoop.
yeah,
That little moment, that like, woo, yeah,
yeah.
that little bit of excitement, yeah.
I see it with so when we train on a Saturday, the football the footballers come in because they've been playing on the seven-a-side pitches. I know when they've won and I know when they've lost, right? And I walk into and I went in last week and this went down like a lead balloon, right? So they'd lost. And I went in. I don't know any of these guys. I just know them through seeing them at a couple of times a month when they were at the changeover. And I walked in the door and I was like, I take it you lost today, guys. Right? Now that's completely different. Now, what I don't like about that is, and I'm actually even getting shades of it just now while we're talking, like you need to calm down. You know, you need to take a step back, take a couple of deep breaths, and just shut up for a minute. You know, so we can still get like that as adults, and our dogs who are having a similar experience on the planet with what they are exposed to because they live in a human world
Hmm.
can be feeling shades of that without the human ability to cope or deal with it.
Yeah, and I think I don't want to go too deep there because we will run away with ourselves.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I hear what you're saying, and something I'll often say to my clients is, if you drop me in an arena with a Bengal tiger, I'm going to run.
yeah.
Now, that presentation of energy doesn't necessarily correlate to happiness,
Yeah, yeah,
and it's something that's really hard to put across to somebody that wants to see the joy and love in their dog.
yeah.
Because we emphasize our dogs and we want to see them frolicking and having fun and playing and running around, but we seldom think about what the long-term effects of that are going to have.
Okay. What behaviors do you see when the dogs are getting that crispy way? What do you start seeing in them, or what should people look out for?
Oh, that's an interesting question, isn't it? um, I guess ultimately I'm going to refer back to the losing their head. All
Okay.
right, what I'm looking for is context. If you can see a reason they're elated, if you can see why they're jumping around a little bit, like they're chasing a ball around, or there's a stick blowing in a leaf blowing in the wind. If there's a bit of context to it, like let it be.
Yeah.
But if you're seeing that energy coming out of nowhere and you're like, what's going on? If you have to ask what's going on, then your dog's already asking what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And
we're
I
10,
think,
15 minutes too late, or later than we probably needed to be, rather.
yeah. So in terms of when I'm training with people, what I'm generally telling them to look for is intensity. Yeah, like fleeting moments and fleeting interest is balance amongst the distractions, the attention on the owner, the sniff in the ground. But when you start moving towards intensity, so I'm chucking my nose into this smell and I'm sniffing it and I'm not moving, or I'm locking into that dog and I'm looking and I'm not letting go,
Yeah.
then you're starting to look towards that dog's becoming fixated or emotionally invested in something. And it might not even be what they're looking at, but if you're seeing that fixation and that emotion and it's starting to build towards energy, they're getting quicker, they're getting more paced, they're getting less coherent. Like, you group it all together, and what you're actually looking at there is the dog's getting uncomfortable.
Yeah. That's an interesting one you said there about the sniffing the ground, and they get locked into that. So that could be an escape behavior from,
Yeah,
I'll pay attention to this because if I'm paying attention.
it's simple avoidance, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's simple avoidance. Is I'd rather sniff this over here than deal with that over there.
Yeah.
So, and I think this is where it can become hard with some people to see it, because it's not always as apparent as the black and white of what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I don't need to say this out loud, but when we're talking about behavior, we also have to think about context.
Yeah.
If we're not taking in the context in where it's provided, then we're missing half of the conversation or half of the information available to at least have.
Yeah.
But I think we also get misled by habit as well. So people coming to the house is a great example. Our dogs generally get excited because they have that anticipation that somebody's coming to say hello and they're going to get a fuss and some interaction, and the energy comes up.
Mm-hmm.
And they've seen that from 8 weeks old.
And the dog might not want that fuss and interaction.
Right. Like, the amount of times I go into a dog at consult, I let them come up to me, I go down to their level so they can't get anything wrong. I'm fair game now.
Yeah.
And they might like jump up, they might put the paw on my shoulder, they might sniff and lick my ear, whatever they're going to do. And then they have a couple of minutes. I don't touch them. They turn around, they walk around, and they settle down. And the owners often look at me and go, I have never seen him be so calm.
Yeah.
And all I've done is given the dog the space to have that conversation on his terms.
Yeah. And to feel what they're feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it, mate. Take a moment. I'm a bit of a stranger. I smell like lots of dogs, lots of people. I'm probably a bit odd to you. That's absolutely fine. You
and
take your time.
You're tall, aren't you?
6'2".
Yeah, yeah. So big guy, big dark guy coming into the house, you know.
Yeah, and contextually that's hard for many dogs and people.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we seem to put this obligation on them that they have to greet people at Mach 9. And often when you come in and change the tone and you respond to the conversation the dog's having, people are often gobsmacked about how much calmer the interaction can go.
What do you find people do when they? So I know what I do, but what do you find people? So what do people do, and how do you deal with it? If the dog runs up towards you when you come in, what's the person's reaction to that? A lot of the time.
Sorry, say that again. So how do my clients react when their dog comes running up to me?
Yeah, so you go into the house for the first time or the second time even, or third. Or could do that thing for the office, or fourth or fifth. Right?
Yeah.
So you go into the house and their dog runs up to you. Okay. What do you see from them? What do they do?
So generally speaking, I see a lot of excuses.
Yeah.
I see a lot of owners go, oh, look, he must be pleased to see you, or he really likes it when you visit.
Yeah.
Right. And 9 times out of 10, they pair it with, oh, he must really enjoy working with you, or he really enjoys being around you. And they genuinely want to believe the positive in this situation.
Yeah.
And what I often take the time to do is respond to the dog. So if he is coming up at me, I am going to make myself smaller because I am tall. And I generally am going to give that dog the space to feel and think and work through it. But I'm not going to fuss him. I'm not going to add another level of reinforcement in there for behavior that honestly isn't necessary. Yeah. I'd much rather that dog kind of come in, clock me, oh, all right, and then walked off again. And I'm sure they would too in the grand scheme of things. But the problem is when you come home to your dog and they're happy to see you, it fills our cup too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then you're tapping into what the owner needs from the dog rather than what the dog needs for the dog.
Yeah.
I read a really interesting post the other day, actually, and it read along the lines of dog training is about what you want from your dog, and dog psychology is about what your dog needs from you.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
And it hits home with me because we all want our dogs to be social and happy, and we all want them to be able to do everything that they come into contact with in life. But we often don't think that what we want is for them to simply do nothing in the face of difficulty.
So we've got our dog. You take your dog out, your dog's getting that kind of hyper way. They jump up, they start. So the usual ones they'll see running around, pulling on the end, leading a kind of frantic, semi-frantic manner with intensity, chasing leaves, jumping up and grabbing the lead, jumping up and grabbing your clothing, jumping up and humping you, barking. Those are indicators that our dogs may be overwhelmed, very often that they are. What do you do to help people help people help their dogs to come down from that?
So before I'm helping them come down from that, I'm trying to help them maintain better levels in the first place. If they're working on them levels through their whole routine, as opposed to just that walk, chances are you're going to be at 60% full before you even go out for your walk. I do a lot of pauses. So, for example, you might get your dog kitted up with their harness and their lead, and you might put your shoes on. So these are all triggers for that anticipation, those emotions and those things that are about to follow. But then I might ask my owners to just, sit on the stool in the kitchen and just chill for 5 minutes, let your dog just work through it. Similarly, like if they go into the park, they're getting them out of the car and they're going for a walk, same thing. Get out of the car, take it all in for yourself, leave the dog in the car for 10 minutes, let them come down a peg. Long lines, they're a great way. So you can give your dog some space to move around and sniff and kind of work through some things, but you don't need to be driving forwards. Just chill, just simmer. Just give your dog the space to feel what they need to feel. And they're going to stop elevating that communication to a problematic level.
Have you seen there's a movie, We Were Soldiers, with Mel Gibson? Right. And there's a great scene in that. So it's the story's about for those of you who don't know, it's the first major contact between the North Vietnamese army and the American army in the early 60s in Vietnam. And it's going horribly wrong. They're about to get overrun. And you see the Mel Gibson character. I can't remember what the guy's, the colonel, he's now a general, his name was. But he walks out and he stands in the middle of the battlefield, and then you just see him slowly he just takes everything in. And it takes about 15 seconds, and then he starts making decisions because he's still in his head and his mind, and his body, so that he can make clear decisions which will help his soldiers. And it's
absolutely
similar.
It's just that processing time, isn't it? And so I use a local country park for a lot of my work, and it's quite a vast park. Like, you can see a long way. There's some nice little corners with some trees in, and there's a lot of shrubbery. There's a kids park there. There's a car park there. And I've sat there before and worked off of there for the whole day. And I, out of curiosity, count the dogs in the footfall. And it's been upwards of 150, 200 people and their dogs over a day. And then when you take into consideration your dog's senses, their sense of smell being so much better, and they can smell things that have been there 2-3 days prior. And you take that footfall into consideration, suddenly you're not getting out in the same environment every day. And we don't take any initiative on that. Like, we go, oh, my dog comes here every day. They habitually get out of the car, they run over there, they go for a wee, they go for a poo, they go into that bush, into this bog, and we get this habitual walk round and round, that instead of actually allowing your dog to be present and engaging in his environment and enriching him, what happens is they just go through the throws. More often than not, what I found is they go through the throws just to get back to the car so they can get home and rest again. Because it's become such a habitual walk, and it's so heightened and stimulating that they're not really taking anything in, because they just haven't got that. They're not in their body, they're not in their heads, they're not in their minds.
We see that with people though. So the park that I use, you see on my videos, they have a couple of concerts that probably towards the end of the summer, and they've got I think they have their food festival as well. And when they do this, they put Harris fencing around part of the park, right? And so it's the same park, but we can't walk the same way. And the amount of people that it really throws them off their game And this is but that's exactly the same as you take the dog out to park and the dog's like, there wasn't a deer smell there yesterday.
Yeah. And
You
I
know?
think to further build on that, like if you look at that in the right perspective, it's a tool for us
Yeah,
because actually I can do the same walk clockwise and anti-clockwise over 2 different days. And they are completely different walks as far as my dogs are concerned. They
yeah,
behave differently. They don't get into those patterns of behaviors because they're taken in where they're stood. So they're not flooding forwards to try and get more or to try and fulfill themselves or trying to find something new because it already is because we've switched it.
yeah, yeah.
And I think like to use yours, they done a run in the run in the park things,
Hmm.
park run. That's the
Yeah,
one. They
yeah,
done a park run. They trail run a park run in this park the other weekend. And I got my dogs out first thing on the Monday morning, like I always do out of the car. And they were nose to the ground. They were not moving for anyone. Suddenly you've got an extra 300 people there over the weekend. The dogs were like, who's this? What's going on?
yeah,
Because it was so different. And we just don't even compute that.
yeah,
We just fall into that bandwagon. And again, an analogy I use with my clients, I said, if you drew a line every meter on the floor in front of you, and you assume that within that meter is 100,000 sniffs.
yeah,
Every meter you're taking in 100,000 new sniffs. And the figures are miles out, but it's a great idea, a
yeah,
great concept. But when you're constantly or perpetually walking forwards, your dog doesn't get the time to process any of that,
yeah.
and it becomes the unanswered question. And I
So
think,
on you go, on you go.
yeah, I just think that just slowing down and giving your dog the time to literally sniff the ground he stands on, and not just like, oh, my dog's on a sniff, so I'm going to wait for him to finish, but actively and consciously slowing down so that your dog is doing more sniffing and less running
Yeah,
is a much healthier way.
yeah, yeah. And there's a couple of things there. So we're going back to your list of 5 things, right?
Yeah,
You've got, from what you're describing there, you've got, I wanted to expand a little bit on the walk, but you've got your dog outdoors, right? And then you've got enrichment.
yeah,
Now, you come in from the park run on a Monday morning, the park run's been there on the Sunday, and there's, those 200 new people there. Although that is enriching for the dog and the dog is outside, the dog, just as you're saying there, needs all that time to process that information, and then they then need time to sleep in order
mhm,
to, or rest in order to process that. And if we're
yeah,
not allowing for those things and giving them the opportunity to sleep, then they then start becoming crispy again.
yeah. And again, so moderation is the key here, isn't it? Like dogs need significantly more, or double the sleep quantity we have.
Yeah,
And if they get that all at night, it's going to leave them feeling starved of it during the day.
yeah,
So by late afternoon, early evening, your dog's starting to mess about and it's starting to get hard. They're getting crispy, to use your word.
yeah,
All right. So yeah, when you've been out and particularly under high load, so you've been to a busy environment or you've been and done something challenging or your dog's just been very, very engaged in his environment, it's important that we come back and we kind of give him the space to simmer and rest and switch off. And we're going to tap into another one here in terms of safety. Like, have they got a space within that home to feel safe to switch off and rest? Like, have they got an area away from the front door and the front window? Have they got an area that isn't a thoroughfare in the house with constant disruptions?
yeah,
And again, 9 out of 10 of my clients, the answer is no.
yeah,
We've got our bedrooms, and if we've really had enough of our day, have a guess where we're heading?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but we don't extend that courtesy to our dogs.
It's
Um,
interesting because it's a 2 bedroom flat I've got, and I live with my son. And Logan will spend time with us or not. Max will spend time. So we do. I mean, we don't spend a massive time in each other's pockets, but if we're in the room, if we're in the house together, we eat together. We both do jiu-jitsu together and we go to the gym together. So I think that's more than a lot of people. And I'm fortunate because we're pals as well as my boy, and we like each other's company. But when we're in the house, we chat. He comes in from work and we have a chat and stuff like this. We, normal, the kind of pleasantries, how was work and blah blah blah. but he'll go into his room a lot because he's 22 and I'm his dad. And he's like, I don't want to sitting all night talking to me, or keeping me company, So he goes in there and plays his guitar and goes online with his pals and games and stuff. And what's interesting about what happens with Logan, the doors are open in our house most of the time. So if he's on the bed behind me just now, sleeping. But depending on the day that I've had, if I'm watching television, he'll either come in and join me and sleep on the couch, or he will come into the bedroom and go into bed to get away from it. And it was brilliant last week. He was settled in the bedroom where and I think I was recording a podcast, and he could not have been more obvious about it. He got up and he was like, and then he jumped off and went into the living room. He's like,
This again.
Can you not see I was sleeping? No. But we need to be aware. And I just laugh because he's got to say, he's got a quiet space that he can go into. And I was like, sorry, pal, I have to get this work done. But if your dog's bed's underneath the stairs and you've got a busy household with kids and they're running past and their friends are in and stuff, how can we change that for our dog to make it easier for them?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I hear it myself. Like my dogs are pretty good at taking themselves off. And I do the best I can with my house, and I'll explain that in a minute. But sometimes we get it wrong. They've got free access to the vast majority of our home. And they do lop about wherever they want. They're not always in the same room as us. They'll take themselves off. And for me, that's a measure of, well, you're independent, you're making your own choices, and you're taking care of yourself. And that's really lovely. But I guess in small houses, it is a little bit more challenging.
Yeah.
But for me, what safety looks like is trying to get them away from like the external walls and windows, like bringing them into the heart of the house a little bit if you can, trying to keep them away from thoroughfares. So, yeah, hallways, front doors, front room windows, they're all going to lead towards excessive stimulant.
Yeah.
And effectively a lack of safety, or perceived safety anyway. So creating an area, utility rooms are great. They're often low traffic environments. They're often hard floors. They've often got cupboards and not really too much to destroy. Like they're nice places to put your dog away. Not to mention they're also wiped clean, so when your dog's away after a long walk. But it's just creating, I think, that consistent routine with using them spaces as a puppy.
Yeah.
Like if you use a utility, for example, and you're doing the best you can with a puppy and you're getting them up, they're going out to the toilet, they're puddling around for a little bit, then maybe you're doing a little bit of training work, you're giving them a meal, and then you're putting them back to bed. Because let's face it, when they're sleeping 20 hours a day, that's about all they're doing when they're awake.
Yeah.
And if you're putting them away in that safe environment will be a safe environment for the rest of their days. The hardship, I guess, comes when you've got dogs that haven't had that security and safety, that haven't had that small den-like feel, that small environment that makes them feel safe and cozy. And then that's up to us to educate either crate training and teach them that being in a place on your own, and specifically this place, like give you your meals in here, make sure that place is where all the good stuff happens, but the independent good stuff.
Yeah.
Like an enrichment feed, a chew, a Kong, a snuffle mat. Give them all that good stuff that they can do for themselves and don't need you for.
Yeah.
In that place, so that they're building that solitude, I guess, and that independence in that environment. And it will become a positive exposure. It will become a place they want to be.
So there's a few things there, and it's just the nature of people's understanding of things.
And I welcome a challenge, John.
No, it's okay. No, not at all. It's like that kind of internet trope of, so what you're saying is, and you're like, no, that's not what I've said at all, right? And I'm hard pushed to find you've taken that from what I've said. So you've got, and the reason I'm saying this is because people, yourself, right? Facebook, Instagram, social media has reinforced people's ability to object to it and be reinforced for everything, right? So we've got a screenshot these and enter. If you if you're on my personal page, you might see some of them. So we've got a local group, local neighbourhood group, and I use it because you can advertise business on a Sunday, right? That's why I use it, right? And one of the ones last week was would the person who cut me off on traffic at such and such a street, and they mentioned the person, the make and model of their car, and called me such and such out the window. What exactly is your problem, right? Now, that would just be a quiet thought, or even a loud thought 30 years ago. You just have kept that to yourself because nobody would have cared. Maybe said to your pal, right, or your spouse when you come in. But the fact that we can put that online and 100 people interact with you, it's ridiculous, you know. So the point of all that is you've got that cozy space in the utility room. We need to be cautious of, I had a client just now and they weren't, so we look at your list, okay, not enough play, not enough enrichment. The walks were okay, but they hadn't taught the dog to settle separately from them. So what they did was they then excluded the dog into the utility room. And we're not,
I see where you're going.
You know, so we've got that, and the difference, and this is where I was just, because I'm always looking, I've been doing this a long time, always looking at people, what people will object to. So what you'd said about in your house, the doors are open, so your dogs are free to come and go as they are. But they're adult dogs that you have trained them to do that. Same as with Logan, right? So we have to teach them the skills, because until we've taught them the skills, they can go into another room when you're not there. They can soil the place and get into trouble like chewing stuff.
Yeah, so I hear you. I see your angle.
Yeah. And then the flip side of that, the flip side of that is if we then put them into that cozy place but aren't providing what you had said, and we just put them in there because they're bothering us, we're not teaching them to settle on their own and gradually phasing that in and out. We now just, that's them on exclusion. Whereas what we're looking for is a dog that has, like your dogs or like Logan, that can take themselves and have the skills, necessary behaviour and training to make that choice. But that takes work.
I think where you're coming from, the angle, if I'm to understand you right, what you're saying here is you don't want it to be construed that we're saying, "Oh, just put your dog away."
Exactly.
And you're absolutely right. That's not what I'm saying.
No, I know that's not what you're saying. I know that's not what you're saying.
Yeah. But in the same breath, we also do have to teach it.
Mm-hmm.
And the best way that I can bring that to you right now is providing the right environment.
Yeah.
All right. Whether that be quiet time in a room with things that are appropriately stimulating, like an antler or a chew, or an enrichment feed. It's already feeding time, so let's establish them feeding times in isolation.
Yeah.
All right. Let's not go locking them in a room and giving them stuff to stimulate themselves all day, because that's counterproductive. That's not what we're trying to achieve here.
Yeah.
But let's first build up a relationship with them being in that room and doing something fun, enriching, engaging on their own.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the skill that we're looking for there, the goal is to settle, but the skill we're looking for there is independence, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And in order to create that independence, we've got to have a degree of separation.
Yeah.
But we also need to be mindful of our timings and things like that, and making sure that we're not overwhelming or pushing too hard or too fast. But then we're pushing the other way and going towards, well, we actually, yes, we need to give our dogs the space to turn off, but also some dogs don't come with that as a default.
Yeah.
And it's hard, because I see the other side of the coin as well, where I go into a puppy and they're like, well, we've been leaving them for 5 minutes this week, and next week we're going to do 6 minutes, and then we're going to do 7 minutes, and then we're going to do 8 minutes. And I'm just like, look, we're sat here talking. We've been sat here talking for 40 minutes now, and your puppy's in the other room flat out asleep.
Yeah.
They've got no problem with being apart from you. So you're now going too far.
Yeah.
And you're going to create a rod for your own back, because they're going to expect to be woken up here or there or whatever. It's got to be, dare I say it, more organic.
Yeah.
And
That's the hard part, isn't it?
yeah, and I think like we're never, even you and I, with the best will in the world, we are never, ever, ever going to get the figure for each dog's sleep quota and sleep duration right. We
Yeah,
can't.
yeah,
That's implausible. But what we can do is we can tailor our sleep routine to our routine.
yeah,
And we can say that, right, you're up in the morning, you're out for 20 minutes, half an hour, then I've got to go in the shower and I've got to get myself ready for my day. You're a puppy, so I can't trust you to be loose in the house. But what I can do is put you in this room with something to stimulate you because I'm still around.
yeah,
And I'm going to come back on checking you when you're done, then let you up for the necessary toilet stuff.
yeah,
But then I'm going to go to work.
yeah,
And then it's down to, right, well, I have to make my house and environment safe and puppy tended for. But then you start to create habits in your routine.
yeah.
And that habit in your routine is far stronger than telling a dog to lie down and settle. Because at the end of the day, if you're telling them to lie down and settle, they're working for you.
Yeah. And we've got there, what's always trying when I'm giving people information or doing presentations and stuff, we've got routine and things that are routine and predictable provide safety and security. And then things that are variable provide enrichment and interest and a colourful life.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
So you've got, when you've described there that you've got that routine that you've just described, but then when you take the dog out for a walk, the difference between a Friday walk in the same location and a Monday walk when the park run's been on a Sunday provide the enrichment. So they've got the routine and the predictability. We're going to this park, but now those smells are there, or the bouncy castle's there, or
Mm.
or
Yeah.
and it's just building that into your life with your dog.
Yeah, and the other side of that coin that I quite like. So the word routine, I think, is often misconstrued.
Yeah,
Um, I think when people think routine, they're thinking like army routine, like 9 a.m. we do this, 7 a.m. we do that. But for me, routine is value, like meeting them quotas, them values
yeah,
every 24 hours.
yeah,
And I think if you can step away from trying to run by a clock, because at the end of the day, a dog doesn't wear a watch. So if you step away from running by the clock and you make it more about, I promise my dog that every 24 hours I'm going to meet these core needs and values. What you then do is, rather than the dog predicting the next thing or rushing for the thing after, they become more settled and calm, and they're like, they'll take me out when it's time.
yeah,
I know they will. I have a history of them taking me out every day, so I don't need to worry about it. I don't need to ask for it. I don't need to miser for it. So I may just as well switch off and relax now.
yeah.
And
And
they,
on you go.
no, you're fine, Karen.
So there, and it's just, and I'm all. It's like Bruce Lee's books when he wrote. I think it was Jeet Kune Do. I think that was the book that he wrote, and what he was reluctant to do when he was writing, because the guy was a genius, and he was like he just completely thought differently from the way it would trained traditional martial arts before. The thing that he'd said was, as soon as you write it down, people start following it because of that. Well, that's the way that Bruce Lee said that you can do it, but he doesn't know everything, and he also knew that he didn't know everything. So when you're saying there 24 hours, what I'd like people to just take into consideration, there's going to be some 24 hours in a month where that's not possible. So you just make up
Yeah,
a little bit the next day and a little bit the next day and a little bit until you've got. So if it's not, but that doesn't mean you then can't do it because then
right.
you're doing the lifestyle for the dog.
And this I'm not going to call it an argument because it's not at all. This topic
Yeah,
is often one that I get into with my clients because I'll give them a crib sheet of what I think that dog's day should look like. And I have clients again because they're driving at this high criteria because they're training their dog.
yeah,
They're trying to hit all them figures every single day, and they're racking their brains. I just can't do this, or I just can't fit that in. And I'm like, look, these are a guideline for your day,
yeah,
but they're also cumulative. All right, you might have a really busy day today. You might cook the walk, and you might be out for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, or it might be really busy, or something strenuous happened. Give them a quiet day the next day. And the
Absolutely.
example, yeah, the example I use there, like I'll go off hiking in the lakes for the weekend and I might do 30, 40K with both my dogs. Right. And they're predictable, they're out with me. But whilst they're doing that, they cannot physically achieve their sleep quota.
Yeah.
Do they need enrichment that day? No.
Probably not. Yeah.
Do they need more food that day? Probably.
Yeah.
And do they need as much downtime as I can possibly give them around that? Yeah. So
Yeah.
have a guess what? When I get back to the campsite on them days, they're not out on the site on a long line while I sit with my mates around the campfire. They're in the car,
Yeah.
asleep,
Yeah.
because that sleep is more valuable to them than them being out in that situation.
Yeah.
And it has to be, it's back to that word organic, isn't it?
Yeah. And then the
And it
flip
has,
side of that would be the days that, so you're out for the 3 days over the weekend and you do the big walk one day. So the next walk, you're not doing as much, the next day rather, you're not doing as much physical covering of distance, but you might be outdoors with them sitting at the beach with a campfire for up 3 or 4
yeah,
hours with them just pottering about and chilling
yeah,
out, splashing in the water, coming for a play, going to say hi to people, and then going back to sleep.
yeah. And I'm going to make a bold statement here, John. I'm not proud. Am
Please
I proud
do.
of this? Am I proud of this? Don't know. I don't walk my dogs every day.
No, either do I. No.
Right? I do not walk my dogs every single day.
Yeah.
All right. They are exercised based on their load.
Yeah.
And some days they come to work and they stooge for me with my clients, and that's enough.
Yeah.
You
Now,
know, they're on a they're in a captive environment in the sense of they're on a 2 meter lead. They're usually strapped to me so I don't have to mither with them too much.
yeah.
And they're predictable. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But whilst I'm talking, they're just bimbling around, sniffing and doing their things, and they're often dealing with less palatable behaviours from other dogs. So on those days, they don't go for a walk.
Now, and again, it's just where people, I'm conscious of, one, I don't want to insult anybody that's listening to this in the first place, okay? And most of the people that will be listening to this will be on board with us, will understand what we're saying anyway. But it's the outliers, it's the yes butters, or the what you're saying is, that's not giving people the excuse not to walk their dog every day.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. What that's pushing towards, from my perspective, is look at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Read the room.
Course of the week. Yeah. Or a 3 day period or a 4 or 5 day period.
Yeah. If I've done 40K up in the lakes over the weekend and I know that my dog's sleep quotas are down and their exercise quotas are through the roof, I'm probably not taking them out Monday, maybe even Tuesday too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I do, what it will probably look like is hopping them up out the back of a car, sitting on a park bench, letting them sniff around for 20 minutes and getting back in the car and going home.
Yeah.
Right. It's got to be relative, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And if you see a period of high stress or high change within your routine, Christ, if we've been taken into hospital and the routine gets upset, right? Somebody else has been responsible for walking your dog, maybe if you're lucky, but you're going to come back from that period of time and your dogs are going to need something different.
Yeah.
Yeah. It might be more rest because your dad's been an absolute hero and he's come and taken the dogs out for 4 hours because he wants to be helpful. It might be more rest, or it might be that they want more company, or it might be that they need a little bit more stimulation, or it might be that they could do with some playtime or a good walk. Like, it's going to be different every single day, but the general consensus in the bigger view there is look at the bigger picture and balance your dog's week.
Yeah. Over those 4: sleep, walk, or outdoor stuff, what they're eating, how much they're eating, when they're eating, enrichment, and play.
Yeah, and just to go back to food, we all know that diet's important, but ultimately how you feed your dog can make a massive difference to their sense of fulfillment.
Yeah.
Dogs are on this planet to hunt and quest food.
Yeah.
So if you make getting their food a little bit more thoughtful, not challenging, but a little bit more thoughtful and considerate, so scatter feeding in the ground, that's going to tap into a little bit more of their intrinsic kind of needs and wants and desires. It's going to make them feel a lot better than a bowl full of food in the corner of the room.
Yeah. Awesome. And I said to you at the start, there's so much
there really is.
There's more that I would like to talk about, but we can get back on for another chat. So this has been awesome. So thanks for taking time out of your day. The question I ask somebody, a previous guest will leave a question. You'll leave a question for somebody else. Okay, it's not dog related. Would you
Oh,
rather,
okay.
right? Would you rather be rich or would you rather be famous?
Would I rather be rich or rather be famous? I guess it depends on your determination of rich, doesn't it?
So let's talk about. We'll say I assume financially rich.
Financially rich. Um, I mean, it'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Let's be real. I'd take the money over the fame because at least with the money, nobody's judging what your every move.
yeah,
Um, Take the money, do what I want to do with my life, help the people I want to help, have the dogs that I want to have, and live the life the way I want to live it.
yeah.
I'd
Awesome.
take the money.
Where can people find your stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have an Instagram page. It's Attune Dog Training. I have a Facebook page, same name, Attune Dog Training. I do have a big website up and running as well, which is attunedogtraining.com. It's all as simple as it can possibly be. My number's available on WhatsApp. It's published online pretty much every place I can possibly find. So I'm not hard to find. Always appreciate any social interactions and followings. We're all here for the same reason. And I think sticking together and supporting each other is the best way to do that. So,
Wonderful. Awesome. That's been great. So thanks a lot,
no,
mate.
it's been an absolute pleasure, John. It was a good topic as well, nice and interesting.
Yeah.
Always welcome always happy to help you out and welcome any further interactions from you
Yeah,
as well.
absolutely. No, we'll get you back. There's loads more we can talk about, so we will. Thank you.
You're more than welcome.